Ladies and gentlemen, may I firstly, on your behalf, give a very, very warm welcome to the Premier of Victoria, Jeff Kennet, and his wife Lindsay. Mr Premier, Robert McClelland, ladies and gentlemen, during a condolence motion in the Legislative Assembly for Sir Henry Bolte, Rob McClelland gave the credit for his entry to Parliament. He said, "I am reminded that it was Sir Henry who was responsible for my becoming a Member of Parliament, both by suggesting the seat I might stand for and by supporting me in the election campaign in which I was elected." Rob continued, "I can remember him coming to Carramborough and addressing a meeting of 300 people in the church hall in days when public meetings were still the vogue. I recall also asking him before the meeting what he was going to speak about, so that I might not clash with whatever he said. His response was, 'You say whatever you like at the meeting. If you are wrong, I will straighten you out.'" He continued, "I was made aware that a candidate's role was very much the supporting rather than the starring role. It was a good lesson to learn." Rob said later in the same speech, "I am one of the few remaining dinosaurs in Parliament who can remember Henry Bolte in this House, although it was for only 18 months or so that we were here together. It was a great privilege to be in Parliament with him, to share occasions and to see that the Premier of the State and the leaders of the other parties could spar with one another, but beyond it all remain firm friends off the stage. It is an atmosphere which many of us could remind ourselves should be encouraged and retained in the future." I would now like to call on Mr Cyril Molenyeaux, a former member of the State Executive of the Liberal Party and a former President of the Berwick branch, to propose the toast to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Australia.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please charge your glasses, be upstanding and assist me with the royal pledge. Ladies and gentlemen, the Queen. Thank you. What would you like me to do?
Propose a toast to the country. Jeanette, here's your chance. Propose a toast to the country.
Oh, done it. Don't be silly. All right.
State Parliament for 23 years, who until 1992 held the record for the greatest election victory in this state. The person whose contribution and vision is being recognised more each year and will be in the years ahead. The man who promoted Rob McClelland into Cabinet. Ladies and gentlemen, to support the toast to Rob McClelland, the Honourable Sir Rupert Hamer.
Mr. Premier, ladies and gentlemen, just before the tributes flow to the greatest survivor in the parliamentary jungle of the present time, I'd just like to say, on behalf, I'm sure, of everyone here, what a marvellous gathering this is, and to congratulate Jason and his cohorts on assembling so many, well, actually the best you could get here tonight. Now, this trio of former and present premiers is about to perform briefly. I'm the first violin, and I hope we're going to play in tune, but I've got to tell you, we haven't had any rehearsal, and we've never played together before. So you can guess the result, what it may be, but we're here with one common objective, and that is to pay tribute to one of the great parliamentarians of our time, Robert McClelland. In the 1970 election, he entered State Parliament. He'd previously been pre-selected, 1968 I think it was, for Gippsland West, and he entered Parliament with a reputation for being young, rather brash, forceful, and a strong debater. And so we awaited his contributions with some interest. We didn't have to wait long. He made his maiden speech on the first day he entered Parliament. Now that's not altogether his fault. I mean, he was asked to support the motion which was answering the Governor's speech which opened Parliament. So he was pitchforked into that, I must say. He didn't just dash in. But it's interesting what he was talking about in that maiden speech. It was on the 17th of June 1970, just immediately after he was elected. He spoke first of loyalty, and he described it as arising from mutual obligation, mutual interest, and identity. I don't know whether he remembers those phrases now, but he certainly applied them ever since. And I pay the greatest tribute to someone who has that brand of loyalty, which he has always exhibited. He also then spoke, his second point, was about the forthcoming Ministry of Social Welfare, something new in the Victorian Parliament there, and he spoke of it with approval, and spoke about the need for looking after certain sections of the community who required it. His third comment was on the forthcoming Pollution Control Authority. Yes, we had pollution control. It's now the EPA, but it was Pollution Control Authority then. And he spoke with wonderful colour about frothing detergents and so on like that. I haven't heard him on that exact topic since. And finally, his fourth point was he spoke about the plan to use Crown land for parks, for wildlife reserves, and for forests. In other words, in his very opening remarks in the State Parliament, he was onto some very current and very forward-looking policies. And that has been the mark of Rob McClelland ever since. When he started in Parliament, he turned out not just to be a good debater, but he had a high sense of the ridiculous. And what he liked to do is making the opponents ridiculous. And for that reason, he was in high demand, as I recall, by ministers who were introducing bills into the Parliament, and they wanted someone who could reply to whoever was attacking the bill from the opposition. In other words, it was the riposte. I think there's a word for it in duelling, but anyway, Rob was it. And he was in really great demand in that sort of role, because he did make absolute rubbish and nonsense of silly arguments. And you need someone like that from time to time. Anyway, there he was, and he was a member of various committees, if you read in front of your document there. And he distinguished himself to such an extent that within 6 years he became a minister. Now, I can't say I appointed him, because in those days the cabinet was elected by the members of Parliament. I think it's a very good system, because I always have a very high regard, I'm sure you all do, for people who are elected by their peers to leadership positions. And sure enough, there was young Rob McClelland, put on the list, so to speak, and elected by his companions in the Parliament. And what I had to do was find him a job. And I gave him two, actually. And one was community affairs, or what it was called then? Consumer affairs, that's right. It was called consumer affairs, and the other was labour and industry, which seemed to suit the sort of person he was. And after 2 years at that, and he did it very well, he was appointed Minister for Transport, and it's been said that that's not the sort of job you give your best friend. In fact, the other way around. But on the other hand, you do give it to someone who's rather quick in the footwork. And good at explaining difficult situations. So anyway, there he was, Minister of Transport, and once again he distinguished himself by doing an extremely good job. I don't want to go on. I'm conscious that the three of us are going to speak very briefly, and that until we do, you don't get whatever there's to follow, which I think is a Black Forest muffins. The incentive, I know you will hang on that. But what I just wanted to do, say, just quite seriously for a moment, to just discuss what other qualities you expect of a first-class member of Parliament. Certainly loyalty is number one. Loyalty to principles, the principles which motivate our party, to colleagues in the Parliament, in the ministry, and most important of all probably to the electors who elect you. And I think we can say that Rob McClelland, in all three respects, has kept the faith. Secondly, you need a person of intelligence, and I needn't go any further than that. I mean, he's got a law degree, so what else? You need a person of integrity, and I don't need to describe that any further. You do need, I think, a person of compassion, and Rob showed that from the very beginning. And you need a person of high standards, both in Parliament and in debate. And finally, I think you need a very thick hide. Because you'd be quite sure from the beginning that a good proportion of those opposite and out in the community are trying to fire their darts, and you just better stand up to them. That's all I can say. And again, Rob, very good at that. So I think he, and I hope he feels it, has a reason for great pride in what he's achieved here, in his service to his electorate and to the people of Victoria. And I think in turn his electors can take a considerable pride in their representative. I have very much, I'm told, at least that's what Jason said, I'm supporting the toast. It hasn't been proposed yet, but when it is proposed, I support it.
Thank you, Sir Rupert. Now I'd like to call on the Premier of Victoria from 1981 to 1982, the Deputy Premier from 1972 to 81, Member of the State Parliament for 27 years, and the Cabinet Minister for 24, a true gentleman whose contribution, particularly in education, has benefited all Victorians, a man whose sincerity, dedication and commitment is admired by all who know him, the leader who first had Rob McClelland as his deputy. Ladies and gentlemen, to support the toast of Rob McClelland, the Honourable Lindsay Thompson.
Jason, Mr. Premier and Mr. Former Premier, the man and woman of the hour, Rob and Bev McClelland, members of the McClelland clan, friends, admirers and supporters of Rob and Bev McClelland. You may have heard of that story of the former Member of Parliament who was boasting in the country pub about the wonderful collie dog he had. He said, he's absolutely tremendous. He brings in the mail, brings in the paper, helps me with the shopping, finds my golf balls. And the other day, he said, I swear when I had a hen sale out on the floor, he was gazing through questions without notice. The turn up, he couldn't be that good. He said, if he's as good as all that, bring him in for a drink. No, he said, that's the last thing I'd do. I'm relying on him to drive me home from the hotel. Now, far be it from me to compare any member of the McClelland clan with one of the canine species. In respect of versatility, there is a measure of comparison. I remember March 1970, running into Henry Balti. I said, where were you last night? He said, I was down in Gippsland West speaking in support of young Rob McClelland. I said, how did he go? He said, he presents his case very, very well. So I had to go the following week. I thought I'd better find out a bit about this Rob McClelland. I asked Henry what he did, and he said, well, I think he's a farmer from the way he was speaking. I asked somebody else, and he said, no, he's a high school teacher. I asked a third person, and I said, no, he's actually a lawyer. He worked in the Crown Law Department. So that had me befuddled a little, and when I got down to speak, I asked the chairman of the elected committee what was his occupation, and he said, well, as a matter of fact, he's all three. Now this fascinated me, thinking about it the other night. I thought it may be due to one of three factors, either the McClelland clan genes. I thought that's an advanced form of study, and I don't think a Treasury grant is available for that purpose from Alan Stockdale's. Secondly, it may be due to his education, or it may be due to his date of birth. So I looked that up, March the 8th, 1934. Other person born that day, Oliver Wendell Holmes, a noted wit and jurist. Some connection there. 1934, year of Melbourne centenary, shrine completed. Scott and Black won the centenary air race in 2 days, 23 hours from London up to Melbourne. And it was the year Robert Menzies and John McEwen entered the federal parliament. I thought, well, some connection there. I better examine it further. Maybe it's his education. So last Friday I called in at Melbourne Grammar. I said, what are you doing here, Mr. Thompson, looking for recruits for the Richmond football club? He said, no, I'm looking for McClelland in the magazines of 1951 too. And all of a sudden the headmaster's secretary said, have a look at this, Mr. Thompson, this is magnificent. And this is it. The two main characters in the school play this year, were Mr. Donaldson and R.C. McClelland. Both acquitted themselves admirably and acted their parts with such delicacy and skill that one was inclined to believe that they really were two kind old ladies fussing about their nephews on the stage. Every detail in the characters of the old ladies was carried out by McClelland and Donaldson in their portrayal, the gait and carriage being superbly done. For the rest of the magazine, I saw Parliamentary Society. Leader of the opposition and leader of the Liberal Freedom Party, Robert Roy Cameron McClelland. And the comment was, it was amazing the government stayed in office for so long with such a strong, attacking, aggressive opposition. Then, the following year, I looked it up and found that the Speaker of the Parliament was none other than Robert McClelland. who was given leave for the first 2 sessions of the year to take the role of Martha in Arsenic and Old Lady. Also on a Commonwealth Scholarship, so obviously that's where versatility starts. On the parliamentary side, well, he has always been a brilliant debater. He was the only person during my years there who could make Clyde Holding wriggle and squirm after Clyde Holding had delivered one of his diatribes. Rob used to make a point of getting up, if not next, sooner or later in the debate, and with Sam Loxton laughing loudly alongside him, he used to take Clyde Holding apart consistently. Now, about 2 months ago, 10 o'clock at night, I felt that reading Hansard was more enjoyable than any of the 5 television programs. And I came across an answer given by Robert McClelland to a question of Demetri Dollis, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Well, last night, Mike Tyson partner lasted for 1 minute 59 seconds. I don't think Dollis remained on his feet or with a look of confidence for more than 1 minute, because Rob pointed out that he was wrong on 4 different counts, misleading on 3 other counts, and offensive on 2 other points. There couldn't have been a hole big enough in the Legislative Assembly for Demetri Dollis to dive into, and as far as I could see, he hasn't asked Rob McClelland a question since that. As a minister, well, he was Minister of Transport during my day, and I rang a good friend of mine who was a senior officer in the railways. I said, what sort of a minister did you find Rob McClelland? He said, one of those file signers who just accepted everything put before him. He said, oh, hell no. He said he used to grill us on everything we put before him. And he said one point I'll particularly remember was he queried the size of the underground tunnel. And as a result of querying the size of it, we changed the manner in which the trains would run. Instead of being on the normal rail track, they are set into concrete rails, or rails set in concrete, and the overhead structure was changed. The diameter of the tunnel was changed by 19.5 inches, and that saved millions. So obviously Alan Brown would be very happy to run a special train up into the Pakenham electorate in view of the money you saved the railways. Then you were Deputy Leader during my years, as my months as Leader of the Opposition, and obviously that training you received at Melbourne Grammar stood you in very good stead, because you were a very loyal, effective and industrious Deputy Leader. Finally, we must think alike, Jason, on that question of the 1970 speech. I always interested to look up members' first speech on the address and reply, where you can speak alphabetically on any subject from Aborigines to Zulus, and people tend to let their heads go. But your theme, as pointed out, was loyalty, loyalty to the Crown, loyalty to liberal principles, and loyalty to the electorate of Victoria. And that, I think, indicates the attitude you have taken in parliamentary life right through, and that is why you have been so successful. Rob, you have been obviously a very fine local member, otherwise we wouldn't have had some dozens turned away from tonight's function. You've been a great asset to the parliamentary party in Victoria, and you've been a magnificent asset to successive Liberal governments. Now that the government has removed all restrictions on the service of aged people in various positions, I congratulate you on 25 outstanding years and express the hope that the next 25 years of the Ministry and the Parliament will be equally successful, enjoyable and beneficial to the people of Victoria. Add my congratulations to Jason on the way he's organised the show tonight. The program is the best I've ever seen, and I've already signed him up to organise Richmond's premiership dinner.
Thank you very much, Lindsay Thompson. It now gives me much pleasure to call on the Premier of Victoria to support his predecessors and officially propose the toast to the Honourable Robert McClelland, the man who achieved the magnificent result of the 1992 election and returned the Liberal Party to the Treasury benches, the leader with 19 years' service in the Parliament and the person who is guiding Victoria back to prosperity and restoring the people's pride in our wonderful state, the man who had Rob McClelland as his deputy and now as his Minister for Planning, ladies and gentlemen, the Honourable Jeff Kennet.
Thank you, Jason. Rob, Bev, my parliamentary colleague Robert Dean, Dick, Lindsay, you'll be happy to know I'm actually proposing the toast. So thank you both for the words that you've already conveyed to this gathering. I entered Parliament in '76, which is the date that you've heard Dick indicate was the time at which Rob got his first portfolio. And that, to us as a new group of politicians, was quite an experience. Dick indicated he liked the system of electing the cabinet, and in those days, I think it was, we used to elect all but 4 or 2, wasn't it, Dick? 4. For us as new members, it was a fascinating occasion because to look at the more senior members of the party sitting there as every vote came in, watching their expectations rise, only to have them thrashed on the rocks when they weren't elected by their peers, was something you had to witness to really understood that it could happen. In fact, one of our colleagues, and I won't mention whose name it was, every time he missed out on the ballot, madly rushed to the phone to ring his wife to indicate that this wasn't the ballot. But those of us who'd been elected, we were subject to a lot of discussion from more senior members and among ourselves, because that was the occasion on which I think there were more new backbenchers than there's ever been before. About 23 of us entered the Parliament in 1976. And therefore, we were very much new bloods, and we were taking a lot of advice from our colleagues, and it became very clear that Rob was going to be elected to Cabinet in what in those days was a very short period of time, because with the party winning in '55 under Henry Bolte, and then leading through Dick's period of leadership, there was tremendous stability. It was very hard. In fact, I don't think there was a change in the Cabinet in real terms for many, many years under Bolte. So it took a long time normally to get recognised. Rob getting there in 6 years was a very fine tribute, and he not only started to exhibit very clearly the skills that we've all come to expect of him now, but he also was able to work very closely with other members of Parliament, particularly the newer group, in just helping us ease into the job. So he developed a reputation as not only being a good debater, but more importantly being a good colleague, very much in the vein that Dick and Lindsay has referred to his first speech as being one of a team. How Lindsay ever brings himself to refer back to Hansard and the research he does for nights like this, I don't know. Suffice to say, Lindsay, I've never heard anyone even attempt it, and the diligence which you put on into these evenings is quite incredible. But there is no doubt that Rob, from the early days of responsibility, was not only part of the team, but he played a very important part in making sure the team performed well. There's another aspect of his life that I think is terribly important, and that is he's also a very good administrator. It's one thing to be a good parliamentarian and a good colleague. It's another thing to be a good manager. And while often people think of politicians as something different from businessmen and women in the corporate sense, the reality is we are running, or part of a team that administers the 5th or 6th biggest business in the country. It's probably the federal government, then the state government of New South Wales, Telecom, Coles-Myer, BHP, and then the Victorian government. So it's not much point having people in the job who are just good debaters or nice blokes or women if they can't do a professional job. And there is no doubt in the whole time Rob has been there, he has delivered very professionally to the benefit of the community as a whole. We then went into opposition, and Rob then served with me for a period of time as leader and deputy in opposition. And what was that, dear?
10 years.
No, not as deputy and leader. He had a break and I had a break. But it really was the start of a very, very difficult period, and you really had to be there to understand it. Now, I guess our political opponents are coming to grips a bit with it now, but after we lost in '82, and we were so few of us there in real terms, and we were all so fresh, those first 3 years were very, very difficult. But as you look back, again, I think because of the partnership that existed between Rob and myself and the work that we did, we went within about 1,500 votes of winning that election, much to the surprise of everyone at the time. I think in retrospect, both of us would agree it was probably fortunate we didn't win then. It might have saved the community something had we won in '88, but I don't think we were quite ready then. And I think by '92, everything that we'd learnt in terms of ourselves, with each other, putting together the team, has proved very, very beneficial, but the delay for the community has been very, very expensive. So Rob and I worked very, very closely together in those formative years between '82 and '86. We then obviously went into an election '85. We failed to deliver, and we then continued to work to the election in '88. And that was not a much, it wasn't very much easier. Again, under-resourced, the government of the day was still flying on a bit of a cloud, and you really need around you a group of people that you can rely on for advice, and that were not pushing their own barrows, and ultimately build up that core of experience that would ultimately get us elected as we were in '92. We rely on Rob for a number of things. We rely on him for his common sense. We rely on him for his professionalism, as I have discussed. We also rely on him, as Dick and Lindsay have said, for his command of the House, and there is no other politician in the Parliament since I entered in '76, and certainly not now, who can command the House's attention in the way that Rob does. It's part, I think, of his experiences with his friend Barry Humphries. You often feel as though he wished the roles had been reversed. He leads the Parliament on a merry dance, often for very many minutes. But it is always an absolute experience to witness, and as has been said, he cuts his opposition very closely to the quick in the very nicest way possible, and it just reminds you we're very lucky to have him on our side rather than have him on the other, doing to us as he does unto them. But it's been interesting since the election. We probably have, there's only 4 or 5 of us who had ministerial experience under Dick and Lindsay prior to '82. Rob was one, Haddon Story was another, I was one, who else is there? And Ian Smith. And it's been, what's that chuckle I hear? And I've got to say, although we'd all worked together before, there'd been such a long intervening period, it was really quite an interesting experience to see how we were going to work again together. And there is no doubt that although there are some people there today who were not even in Parliament when we lost in '82, the real core, the substance of the government has been built around both the experience of those who'd served before, mixed with a dash of those who'd come in after '82 who have particular talents. And it has melded itself together as a very, very good team. And it is a team that I feel very privileged to lead, simply because in many senses it could have been Rob, who was Premier today and from '92, because he and I competed for the leadership in '82. I got it, he served me, it could have been easily the other way. But it is interesting that over the period of time that we're in opposition and now in government, that even though some have served a long period of time, the government is perhaps younger and fresher and more reformist than many governments made up of younger people with less experience and certainly less what I would call core values of sort of decency and common sense, honesty, hard work, etc. Someone was just mentioning Ian Smith a moment ago. I'll just tell you one story, if I may. A few years ago in opposition, I presented two other of our colleagues who'd had 25 years service with a plaque from the Parliamentary Party to Alan Hunt and to Tom Evans from Ballarat. Both served 25 years, and we thought the nice thing to do was to commemorate their service. We gave them a beautiful silver platter, we applauded and we saluted and we thanked. Both of them retired at the next election. So a few weeks ago, Rob and Ian Smith both completed 25 years in the Parliament. And in the party room, we saluted them, their service, hard work, etc. And I presented two silver plaques on behalf of the party. And as often I do, I made a quip. And I said something along the lines, well, to you two, we thank you. The last time I presented such two plaques, both of the recipients disappeared from the political scene very quickly. I hope it doesn't happen to either of you. That was on a Tuesday at the party meeting, and at 6 o'clock Ian Smith was knocking on my door saying, "Can I see you, Premier? I've got a problem." And I said to him, "Ian, go away, you can't have a problem, don't waste my time." He said, "No, I really need to see you, I've got a problem." I said, "Ian, go away, I've got a busy day," and he sat down and he spoke for about 10 minutes, and I said, "Ian, you've got a problem." Well, I feel very, very privileged and very, very honoured to be a member of the Liberal Party. It's a feeling of great warmth I've always had ever since I joined, but the real value of being a member of any organisation or any team is really the people you serve with. And I always feel very incomplete when I look around the room and I see Lindsay and Dick, who both were there in this chair well before I was, and in Rob's company, who's obviously got a lot more political experience than I have. But the thing that makes your service in any organisation of value is the people you serve with. And all right, from time to time in any group there's one or two that if you had your day over again you probably wouldn't include them in your inner circle. But in the main I've got to say we have been very fortunate, Rob, myself, Lindsay and Dick, in the quality of people we serve with, but the quality of people we mix with. And I include you all in that because we are only your agents and you've given us the opportunity to serve both the state, our philosophy, but you've also given us the opportunity to come into contact with the people we do in parliamentary life. And as Rob celebrates his 25th year, and ably supported by Bev and the family, it just reinforces in my mind that however much you hear the political debate about issues, the one good thing about our side of politics is it still retains this fundamental respect of each other and what I call the core family values that are so important as we move into the 21st century. Rob McClelland has been part of that for a quarter of a century. It's not a short period of time. It is something that has occupied most of his life in the real sense of his productive life and will obviously occupy a lot more in the future. Just in terms of his performance as a minister, as Dick had to select ministries for him, so did I, and I selected that of planning. Because I wanted someone who had the obvious training, but also the will to put aside the reputation the previous government earned of not in fact making a decision on planning issues affecting this state. And in the short time we've been there now, almost 3 years, the reputation of Victoria in terms of its planning, its codes, the way in which it can very quickly respond with a yes or no, has earned us a reputation right around the state. It is such a good reputation that there has been a substantial amount of new investment in this state for no other reason than the fact that when people put up ideas, they can get a decision very quickly indeed. So it's been my absolute pleasure to have had Rob as part of our team, very much as an equal, a lot more experience than most, who carries that experience not only for our benefit politically, but who carries it, offers it to the public on their behalf, not just for today, but importantly to the future. And I know that, as Dick and Lindsay have both said, we three, leaders at different times of this great organisation, would not have achieved as we have done without Rob's contribution, without his professionalism, without his wit, and without his friendship. And to you, Rob, we say thank you very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my predecessors, Dick and Lindsay, can I ask you all to be upstanding as I propose and toast our friend and colleague, Rob McClelland. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, to be successful either in state or federal politics, you need to effectively represent and serve your electorate. Rob McClelland has given, is giving, and I have no doubt will continue to give first-rate representation to the electorate he is elected to represent in the Legislative Assembly. In 1988, Rob gave an insight into the responsibilities of a Member of Parliament. He said, "I'm not impressed by the Premier," of John Cain, saying that I ought to change my views on a matter like this, the Medical Treatment Bill, simply to curry favour with the majority of people in my electorate who might hold a different view. They did not elect me to be a kind of Gallup poll Member of Parliament. They elected a Member of Parliament to be a Member of Parliament, and on occasions, necessarily, to either support his or her party, or occasionally, where the member's conscience was involved, or where it was a matter of great moment for the member, to differ with his or her party. I have no doubt that I can speak on behalf of the majority of electors in Rob McClelland's 3 electorates over the last 25 years when I say thank you for effective, responsible and enthusiastic representation. I now wish to call on Margaret Claridge, who through Pakenham Young Liberals, the Pakenham branch and the Berwick and Pakenham electorates has been involved with Rob for most of the 25 years, and ask her to make a very special presentation to Rob and Beverly McClelland.
It's fairly chaotic to follow those 3 weeks that we've had so far. But this evening it gives me great pleasure as President of the Pakenham Liberal Party, the Liberal branch, and also as a former Pakenham Young Liberal, and also as Treasurer of the Pakenham Electorate Committee, to do this presentation to you, Rob and Bev. It's not easy getting up here talking in front of a lot of people, and I thought tonight, oh damn it, I won't go with the notes, I'll wing it, so you will forgive me if I make a mess of it. One of the things that I've always found about Rob McClelland is that whenever you want him at a function, he is always available. And I think on behalf of all of the branches within your electorate, of all of the friends, not only just Liberals here tonight, they are your friends, Rob. On behalf of them all, I would like to thank you for your unstinting efforts for this electorate. And also, Bev, supported Rob in his endeavours, and one of the things that we were trying to think of different things that had happened over the many years that you've represented us, and one of the things that we found out is that for 25 years Rob has always attended the dawn service. For 25 years there's not been one dawn service that our member has missed. Not many people that say that. It's cold and it's a thankless task, and something that he does with obviously great passion. Now, Beverly, you're first up. We have a small token of appreciation here, Bev. But it's not a small token. Isn't it wonderful? Thank you very much. Rob Roy, front and centre. Oh, Robert Roy Cameron, sorry. Just a moment. He just made a comment that it's alarm clock. I'll start again. An alarm clock. Wrong. He just said something on a silver tray. Something you can put on your silver tray, and we'd like you to open it and read the inscription. Sticky tape.
Mr. Premier and my parliamentary colleagues, former and present, Rob B, member for Berwick. We're in the Berwick electorate tonight, we're guests tonight. I will read the inscription if I can. It says, presented to Rob McClelland, Minister for Planning, in grateful recognition of the 25 years of outstanding service in the Victorian Parliament, Acton Electorate Council, Liberal Party, 21st of August 1995. I think it's really give me a cold shower. And can I say thank you all very much. Premier and Felicity, and friends. It's I suppose it's a rare occasion that a Member of Parliament gets to be able to talk about being a member for 25 years. Something usually happens on the way, and you retire, or you get defeated, or all sorts of things. And I've just got a few notes that I wanted to say tonight. First of all, John Chipperfield, I know, is hiding in the bank, I think, but to our hosts, Trevor and John Chipperfield, young Danny. Danny and my children went to school together, so he's young Danny for me and always will be. Here we are in Clover Cottage, and I would like to say thank you to them for making this venue available for us on what's probably not normally a working night, and for serving us so beautifully and providing such a wonderful meal. Thank you.
to Lindsay and to Dick, they're always generous. I have a secret ambition I'll share with you, and that is to get Lindsay Thompson to do a funeral oration for me and to record it before anything happens. I have to say, he gives the best send-off I've ever heard. And I just felt, I tape recorded one, and then if anything happened, I'd have it in the bank ready, It'd be such a shame to miss it. I'll let you into a secret. Young Jeff Kennet, who had just been elected, spoke so glowingly, and so did Dick, about this business of exhaustive ballots to elect ministers. Look, it used to go on all day. We used to start at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and you would be writing names on pieces of paper and putting them in an ice cream container, and they'd be running out and counting them. And there would be sort of like 85, 95 ballots in the course of the day. It used to go on lunchtime, and then it'd go on all afternoon, and it even went on in the evening on one occasion. And I know the secret of how I got to be elected as a minister in Dick Hamer's government in 1976. And that is that Robert Dunstan, the member for Dramana, who was a minister, got so sick of writing my name that when the ballot came up for him to be elected, he was the next cabinet minister that would have been elected. He voted for me instead of for himself. And I got elected because Roberts, decided he couldn't stand writing my name anymore, and he wanted me to be elected into the cabinet, and he knew jolly well that he'd get in later anyway, so it didn't worry. Now, that's, I suppose, something of the generosity that has surrounded me and Bev as the member for Gippsland West, for Berwick, for Hank. You've been told what I said about loyalty, being two ways, and all those sorts of things right back there in 1970. I meant it, but I've had 25 years as the beneficiary of it. I've had loyalty from my electorate, I've had loyalty from my parliamentary colleagues, my leaders, my family, and really, what a privileged person I've been. So don't think of me as being sort of a saintly member of Parliament because I've been around for 25 years. That might just be because I was a dull fellow and couldn't think of anything better to do. The really wonderful thing for me is that I've had such wonderful loyalty from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and some very special ones. And not in any particular order, of course, but the very special ones include Kate Bastow, my electorate office secretary. Meg Bartell, who's here. And three very special ones, Victoria and Jim and Cameron, the children, who've had to put up with being the member's son or the minister's son or whatever it is for most of their life, including the occasional schoolyard brawls about it being my fault because there was a railway strike, and they've always been very helpful. And Bev, whose loyalty, has made it all possible in the first place, and all of you would know that. So really, it's been a very simple recipe. I've had the right electorate, I've had the right people, I've had the right volunteers come out on wet elections and dry ones to help get me re-elected. I've had people who've been generous in their time, generous in their donations, generous in their spirit, to keep us going. And it's really the only thing that kept Jeff and I going for 10 years in opposition was the thought that we might otherwise be living our lives backwards. He'd been a minister, I'd been a minister, and then suddenly we were thrown into opposition. And it looked as if it was going to be endless years of opposition. And it was only, I think, because he was stubborn and I was stubborn, and we were determined that we would get back, and we would get back and be different, that we saved ourselves, I suppose, from being tempted to resign or do something else or give up for 10 long, weary years in opposition. And when I look at the opposition in Parliament, when it sits, I think, you know, you've only got another 8 years to go. And I like to remind
don't worry, we support you, don't worry.
I like to remind people of that. I like to say, look, you've got another 8 years to go before you even qualify to get back. So, those are the sorts of things. But I always have a sort of wet story to tell. But this wet story I'm going to tell tonight is a true one. And it happened last Friday. So it's really sort of right up to date, the latest, freshest wet story. Bev had her red top on and her black skirt, and we were at a dinner dance for one of the many planning professional organisations, VPLA it was, at the Sheraton Hotel on Friday night. Now, the president, because of the football and because of everything else, all the car parking was full, it was chaos, everybody was late. The president of VPLA didn't arrive, and there was no one to show us to our table. We walked in and saw our name tags on the table, there was no one there, so we walked back out into the foyer again, and we were having a talk. We went up to the quiet end of the foyer, and we were talking away to each other and catching up on the news, because it's one of the rare occasions that parliamentarians and their wives ever get to talk, is when you go out to dinner on an occasion like that. I was talking to, at least I think I must have been listening, because suddenly I found my private space, so to speak, was being invaded by another couple who came and walked very close to me on my right. And you know, we're up at the end of the room, there's no one there, just Bev and I, and these two people. They walk right over and come right up to us as if we're going to start eavesdropping on the conversation. I looked at them, sort of gave one of my, how are you? and treating her as if she didn't exist, they said very quietly to me, we were just coming up to save you. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, she's got you cornered. I tell you, this happened. And I said, it's my wife. I said, it's the only chance we get to talk to each other. Oh, they said, oh, we thought, you know, she had you really buttonholed and she'd had more than her time with her, so we'd come up and break it up. So you see, look, it's just like that fortune teller in Bangkok said, I am surrounded by a golden circle and it's impenetrable, and whilst I'm in the golden circle, I am going to have good luck, good fortune, good everything. You know, I'm one of those wonderfully protected people. Protected by a good electorate, protected by the Liberal Party which has its ideas right, and it's got volunteers and people who work and people who put in, people who do jobs. Protected by my parliamentary colleagues, ministerial colleagues, my Premier, because they too are team members and we work as a team. Protected by my family because they are loyal, even forgiving all my faults. And so to all of you I say thank you for coming and celebrating 25 years with me. It's just an occasion really to come and fill up this beautiful dining room and have a night networking together, I suppose. But, Jeff, I'm willing to give that tray back. And I know I won't disappoint anyone in the room because you're all hand-picked guests. When I say that I'll be standing again at the next election, and I hope and pray I'm Minister for Planning because I'm enjoying it and it's great, great fun. And if ever you can find a spare seat you can win from the National Party or the Labour Party or something like that, can I tell you, go out and grab one because it's the greatest job in the world. You meet the most wonderful people, you can have the most wonderful family, you can have the most wonderful friends, and you can be part of a wonderful government. And frankly, I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you.